So God's plan, kind of starting off, is to elevate Joseph over his brothers. We see that Joseph has these dreams, something about he's going to be over them, over his family. Not sure what all the details are. His brothers, not too excited about that. Ultimately, when you think about it, think just for a minute if you ever had to work with someone that you didn't like very much, but they seem to get favored, even though you don't really think they deserve getting the special treatment. Maybe it's at work, you have a coworker that you work with, the boss seems to like them a lot, even though you don't think they're a very coworker. Maybe it's in a group. How many have to do group projects at school at some point or another? And you have those people who just don't work, just don't contribute anything to the group, but the teacher seems to like them and you know they're going to get a good grade whether they do much of the work or not. Maybe it's even at home with one of your brothers or sisters, and that even though they don't do all that much work and you seem to do more of the chores than they do, your parents just seem to favor them a little bit more. That's kind of where Joseph's brothers are at. Realize the situation. Joseph is not having to work. His job is to go and spy on his brothers and go narc back to his dad. That's Joseph's job. All of his other brothers, they work. They're out there with the sheep, they're out there herding the flocks, they're doing all the things that they're supposed to do. Joseph gets the nice jacket, he gets the nice coat, the nice clothes, and he just gets to go back and forth and tell their dad all the bad and horrible things that his brothers are doing. That's the situation the brothers are in. So yeah, it does seem a little harsh with their like, hey, let's kill him and all that kind of stuff, but when you put yourself in that situation of, man, this person gets favored, they don't deserve it, I do all the work, I do everything, and they get it. They get the favoritism, they get the special treatment. And usually when I hear someone complaining that someone else is getting favored and they get overlooked, it's usually kind of the classic example of what Jesus kind of calls the log in the eye syndrome, in a sense. That usually there's this person, oh, this person sucks, and the boss likes them more, and they do all this stuff, but I'm really the one who does all the work, when they don't actually see all their own issues. They don't see the reason the teacher doesn't favor them, or the reason the parent doesn't seem to give them more praise than the brother or sister, or the reason that is that they don't really work as hard at the job as they think they are. They're great at pointing out other people's issues, but they're not usually looking at their own. Again, when we look at the brothers' lives here, it starts right off that Joseph is giving a bad report. Now, is he making it up? With all the character issues we see in Joseph's life later on, no. He probably is pretty good at telling the truth, and he's telling his father probably the truth pretty straight. They're not doing a good job. When he goes to send them off to where they're supposed to be, feeding the flocks, they're somewhere else. They're off doing something else. They've moved. Joseph has to find some random person to kind of point him in the right direction. So the brothers aren't actually all good at doing their jobs anyway. Their character's not that great. At the turn of the hat, they're willing to kill their brother just because he's really annoying. And most of you may have annoying brothers or sisters, but most of the time, you're not usually really ready to kill them. Of saying, hey, here's a well, let's beat him up, let's toss him in it, listen to him hit the bottom, and let's walk away. And maybe throw some rocks on him, make sure he's dead, we'll tear up his clothes, we'll tell our parents that, oh, he was killed by a mountain lion, came out of the foothills, it was horrible, it was ugly, you'll never find his body. No, none of us are really usually willing to get to that point, but the brothers are, because that's just their character is not the greatest, and it's ultimately going to be their downfall. So we can identify with the brothers a little bit because we understand what it's like to be overlooked, to see somebody else get special treatment. But obviously the first thing we have to do is realize, are we missing our own issues? Is the other person getting favored for maybe a good reason we don't see? Are we not getting favored because of things that we're doing? Let me tell you a little story to kind of sum this up. To give you a concrete illustration. I just heard this last week. At my old church, there was a junior high position, the junior high director position came up, and there were kind of two people at that church who wanted the job. There was Matt, and there was Brandon. Okay, just kind of get those names in your head. It's not, these are actual different Matts and Brandons. There was Matt and Brandon. They both kind of wanted the job. And it came about that it was starting to sound pretty sure that the youth pastor was going to hire Matt. And so Brandon's starting to get pretty upset, and he's figuring the reason he's hiring Matt is because the youth pastor and Matt have always kind of connected pretty well. They watch NASCAR together. I don't know why anybody watches NASCAR, but they do. They watch NASCAR together, they talk football together, they kind of have the same sense of humor, they kind of have some of the same hobbies. Brandon's more the guy who, has piercings, has tattoos, connects just with those type of students. They're both really good connecting with students. They both served a long time in the junior high ministry. But Brandon's thinking Matt's getting the job because he's connected more with the youth pastor. He's friends, he's buddies. And Brandon's thinking, you know what, I don't spend my time with the youth pastor, I spend my time with the students. So, you know what happens usually when you get frustrated that you're getting overlooked and somebody else is getting special treatment? You find those other people to talk to, those other people that you want to kind of pat you on the back and say, oh, I know, you're getting the short end of the stick, and oh yeah, that sucks for you. Like Joseph and his brothers, and they all get around, and they start complaining, they start sharing with each other. Well, Brandon picks this person on junior high staff. Her name's Elisa, and she was actually, all of them were in my junior high at one point or another. But Elisa and Brandon start talking, and Elisa's going, oh yeah, oh that sucks, oh that's horrible, oh yeah, you're getting overlooked, and Matt's getting the special treatment because he likes NASCAR. And so, ultimately, Elisa and Brandon start to decide to go confront the youth pastor. They've worked themselves up into enough frenzy of talking about it with their friends. And again, you guys know how this goes. When you get overlooked, when you feel like you're not getting special treatment, you find those other people to talk to. So maybe just say those little things here and there. Oh, don't you hate it when this person, don't you hate it when Lecce does this? And yeah, and you find those people, you talk to them, and they go, oh yeah, oh that's so horrible, oh I know. And then maybe if you can try to work in a little phrase or here to your boss, or maybe point out something to your parents of what your brother and sister did. You're always so surprised because they just go, oh, yeah, whatever. Like, when I did that, I would have gotten grounded for months. So you find yourself confiding these people. So Elisa and Brandon decide to confront the youth pastor. And they come up and they demand to know, why isn't Brandon being considered for this position? And why are you just going to hire Matt? And they don't say, is it just because he likes NASCAR? But they want to know why Brandon isn't even being considered. Well, the youth pastor, being a good, strong leader and a bold guy, tells them right out. First, he gives them the option. Said, "Do you really want to discuss this here?" It was like right after college group. They're all just coming out. All these people around. You want to discuss this right now? They're like, "Yes, we want to know. You're favoring Matt. You're not even considering Brandon. What's going on?" Well, he gives them the list. Says up to this point, Matt has taken Bible classes. He's almost graduating with a major and heading towards youth ministry. Brandon has taken 5 years to basically try to graduate what would be considered Chaffey, the citrus over in the Zeus area. So 5 years, he's not graduated with his 2-year degree. Brandon has never run an event or run the regular programs. Matt had to run the programs for 2 months when they were in between their last junior high positions. Brandon has never taught a series. Matt has. Just all these sorts of things. So ultimately, and the other big one, Matt had actually applied for the job and Brandon hadn't. Kind of a big one. So once he lists all these out, he's judge, whatever. You know it is, when someone's been completely pointed out in the wrong, but they're so convinced that they're right, they're so convinced, he actually ends up leaving the church. Brandon left the church and said, you know what, I'm done, I'm not getting a fair shake, nobody appreciates me, nobody understands me, nobody realizes all that I contribute, and so he left. And actually Elisa, once she kind of heard what everything was really about and really happening and saw Brandon's real heart, she actually ended up coming back to the youth pastor and apologizing and saying, you know what, I didn't consider those things, I only had one perspective, I'm sorry I got all worked up into that. But ultimately, when you think about that story, it probably isn't too unfamiliar. It isn't too unfamiliar to know that person who gets favored for maybe what you consider no reason, that you think you're getting overlooked. And part of the question in the beginning of the story is, are you those brothers? Are you the ones who are trying to point the finger? But ultimately, you have this log in your own eye when you're trying to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Needless to say, I see it happen all the time. And if you're honest, you know it's true, but it's not too hard to see why Joseph's brothers did what they did. So God's plan for Joseph to basically be elevated over his brothers, God's plan attack, Joseph betrays his brothers. They're ultimately choosing to pridefully follow their own plan as opposed to God's. God has his plan, they're starting to see it work. They think, no, you know what? God, I'm gonna be your instrument of justice. You're obviously not seeing the whole picture here. You've kind of got this crazy plan. Let me help you out. Let me make the decision simple. We're going to take care of Joseph. So that's ultimately where they end up. And I think a lot of times we want to do things our own way,